Chapter 121. Soul was Earl's online alias. He had blown up on the internet, but he had never once mentioned it to anyone. No one knew he was Soul. Now, out of nowhere, Felix had said it right in front of Earl, catching him completely off guard. He turned to look at Bianca and saw the same puzzled expression on her face. Clearly, she had never connected Earl to the internet's rising music star, Soul. She probably thought Felix had mistaken him for someone else. So, Earl played dumb. "Sorry, I have no idea what you're talking about." Felix, however, smirked as he saw right through the act. "All right, I get it. You don't want to talk about it. I still don't know your real name, but I'd love to chat about something. Are you free this afternoon? Let's grab a meal and talk." Felix looked at him with hopeful anticipation. Earl hesitated for a moment but ultimately decided to give Felix his number. For one, Felix had been discreet. He had figured out Earl's identity but wasn't making a scene. For another, Earl needed to know, how did Felix find out? Felix was practically buzzing when he got Earl's number. He begged him repeatedly to call later that evening before finally leaving, glancing back at him every few steps. He was so excited he completely forgot about finding Luca, which had been his original plan. Watching Felix's reaction, Earl came to a realization. Felix had come looking specifically for Soul. Luca was just his backup option. After all, in the online music scene, Earl had achieved far more than Luca ever had. His popularity was on a whole other level. Earl and Bianca left the dorm together. On the way, Bianca kept stealing glances at him with her curious eyes, like a kid trying to solve a puzzle. It was clear she wanted to ask about what had just happened, but since Earl showed no intention of bringing it up, she finally gave in to curiosity and asked softly, "Earl, why did that guy call you Soul?" Earl put on his best clueless face. "No idea, he seemed pretty random to me." Bianca frowned slightly. Her gut told her Earl was hiding something. But since he wasn't willing to talk, she pushed down her curiosity and switched topics. "The radio station interview is coming up. You got this." Bianca admired Earl, but the competition for a radio host spot was tough. She was a little worried about how he'd perform under pressure. When they arrived at the campus radio station, a crowd of students was already gathered, waiting for their interviews. The moment Bianca walked up, a wave of guys turned to stare at her with fiery admiration. Some looked like they were about to start drooling. Then they noticed Earl walking beside her. Suddenly, he was public enemy number one. The interviews finally began. The process included a talent showcase and a speech assessment to test each candidate's voice, presence, and improvisation skills. The first guy to step in was a chubby dude. He attempted a poem about youth, but his performance was so bad he got rejected on the spot. Next was a guy who strolled in while casually picking his nose. His pronunciation was so awful it was almost comedic. He didn't make it past the first round. The third candidate was a bald dude who, instead of following the format, decided to read a love letter he had written to Bianca. The judges kicked him out immediately. Some of the interviews were downright ridiculous, but a few candidates stood out. One guy, wearing glasses and a small mustache, composed a poem on the spot. His command of language was impressive, and his voice had a natural charisma that captivated the room. Even Bianca was impressed. Chapter 122. Even the interviewer, Thomas Cox, who was also the president of the Alnewgo University Student Council, was impressed by the guy with the mustache, Ronald Gardner. Thomas almost hired him on the spot. However, since more candidates were still left to interview, Thomas had to continue. But it was clear he had already made up his mind. The rest of the interviews became a mere formality, and he dismissed each candidate in just a few words. When it was finally Earl's turn, Bianca's expression showed a brief flicker of concern. She worried that Thomas might deliberately make things difficult for Earl since he had already found his top pick. The moment Earl sat down, another interviewer, Mia Goff, swiftly pulled out a printed speech and coldly ordered, "You have 1 minute to read this." Earl took the paper and glanced at it quickly. It was nearly 500 words long. Before he could fully take it in, Mia snatched the paper back and said flatly, "Now, recite it from memory." The entire room went dead silent. Earl cursed internally. This was clearly a setup. They were supposed to give him a fair shot, yet they only allowed him 10 seconds to glance at the speech before expecting him to recite it. That was impossible. The other interviewers also noticed Mia's blatant attempt to trip him up. But they all knew she was only doing it because Thomas had signaled her to. So, no one spoke up. Except Bianca. Her displeasure was evident as she muttered, "Mia, we're just hiring a radio host. This level of difficulty is completely unreasonable." Mia had already planned to give Earl a hard time, partly because she was jealous of Bianca. But now that Bianca had openly called her out, Mia hesitated. After all, Bianca's influence on campus far outweighed hers. To her surprise, Thomas chimed in, fully backing Mia up. "Bianca, our broadcasting program is one of the best in the country. It's a signature of Alnewgo University. We need to uphold our high standards and only hire the most capable." With Thomas's support, Mia regained her confidence. "Exactly. That's what I meant." Some of the other candidates started nodding in agreement, making Bianca feel even more isolated in the argument. Just as she was about to protest again, Earl spoke up unexpectedly. "I'll give it a shot." His words shocked everyone in the room. No one actually thought he'd go through with it. Earl was either a genius or completely out of his mind. And the second option seemed far more likely. Thomas smirked, eager to watch Earl embarrass himself. He even raised the stakes. "Then, hurry up. Say as much as you can. Don't waste our time." But the moment Earl started speaking, the entire room froze in disbelief. His pronunciation was crisp, his pacing perfect, and every single word was accurate. The most shocking part was that Mia, who followed the original script, didn't stop him. Even Thomas, who had been grinning smugly moments ago, started to look uneasy. He couldn't help but repeatedly whisper to Mia, "Has he messed up yet? He must have slipped up somewhere. If he misses even one word, he's out. This is insane. No way he's getting every word right. Why haven't you stopped him yet? Did he seriously not get a single word wrong?" But every time, Mia just shook her head. By the time Earl flawlessly recited the entire speech, Mia was staring at the script. She thought her eyes were failing her. Chapter 123. Thomas even snatched the script from Mia's hands and painstakingly checked every single word from memory. In the end, he had to admit that Earl hadn't made a single mistake. The interview panel stared at Earl like he was some kind of supernatural phenomenon. Sure, Alnewgo University had its fair share of students with photographic memory, but this level of instant recall was on another level. Bianca was even more astonished. She had assumed Earl was done for, yet he had managed to flip the entire situation on its head with an absolutely jaw-dropping performance. Earl's performance surprised her. Thomas, still in shock, turned on Mia. He asked, "Where the hell did you get this passage from? Did you leak it to him beforehand?" Mia's face twisted in frustration. She hadn't leaked anything. She had literally ripped a random page out of a book just to make things difficult for Earl. She had meant to trip him up, not hand him a victory. But Earl had turned the tables on her. Since even she hadn't known what the passage would be, there was no way he could have prepared for it in advance. Meanwhile, Earl sat there calm as ever, like he had known exactly how things would play out. Bianca's gentle, shimmering eyes locked onto him, a strange light flickering in them. Sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating Earl's face. His confident, easygoing smile carried an undeniable charm. At that moment, something stirred deep in Bianca's heart. "Very, very well," Mia finally stammered. "You did memorize it." But then she quickly added, "However, the radio station only has one male host position available. Even though you performed well, you'll still need to go through the final selection round." As much as Mia wanted to get rid of him, she knew she couldn't just cut him loose in front of all these witnesses. Earl's talent was undeniable. If she rigged the outcome too obviously, Bianca would absolutely take the matter up with the school. That would be a disaster for Mia. But something unexpected happened before she could even try to put Earl through another round. The other candidates, having just witnessed Earl's sheer insanity, backed out one by one. Each came up with some excuse: sudden stomach aches, urgent personal matters, anything to avoid competing against him. Even Ronald, who had previously seemed so confident, became nervous and ran away. No way were they about to go up against a prodigy like Earl. Going head to head with him would be pure humiliation. With all the other candidates gone, only Earl remained. And just like that, the position was his. Thomas was absolutely fuming, but he couldn't do anything about it. He had no choice but to accept the result, no matter how much he hated it. As soon as Thomas stormed off in frustration, the rest of the crowd gradually dispersed. Bianca, however, stayed behind. Once she confirmed that Earl had officially secured the position, she rushed over to him, her face beaming with excitement. "Earl, congratulations. Looks like we're co-workers now." Earl grinned as he replied, "I'm looking forward to working with you." Bianca nodded enthusiastically, then took a step back and gave him a curious, admiring look. "Earl, you're insane, in the best way possible. How the heck did you memorize all those words in just a few seconds?" Chapter 124. Earl had no intention of revealing his photographic memory, so he simply said, "I've been training my memory for a while." Bianca gave a thoughtful nod. She had seen shows about people with extraordinary brain power, so she figured Earl must have some sort of special technique. But this wasn't the first time he had shocked her. Back then, he had gone from being expelled to miraculously becoming the state's top scholar. Every time she thought she had seen the full extent of his abilities, he would do something even more incredible. She said softly, "To celebrate your win, let me treat you to dinner." But Earl's mind was elsewhere. He was still wondering how Felix had figured out his identity. As much as he wanted to grab dinner with Bianca, he had to take care of this first. He gave her an apologetic smile. "I've got something urgent to take care of. How about I treat you to dinner tomorrow instead?" "Oh, no worries. Go handle your business," Bianca said without any hint of disappointment or frustration. She waved goodbye and walked off. After parting ways with Bianca, Earl dialed Felix's number. The moment Felix picked up, he practically cheered. "Finally. My musical genius. I've been waiting for your call all day. I was hoping we could have a little chat if you had the time." Earl got straight to the point. "Where are you? I'll come find you." Felix immediately responded, "I've got a private room booked for you at Sorella, right by your campus's back gate." Earl hung up and headed straight for the location. Sorella was a high-end, stylish restaurant, and the private room Felix had reserved was downright luxurious. It was clear Felix had gone all out to show his respect. Once they exchanged a few polite words, Earl wasted no time. "Mr. Chambers, I'd really like to know, how did you find out I'm Soul?" Felix burst into laughter. "Come on, my musical genius, it's just us here. No need to keep up the act. You've done a great job keeping your identity hidden, but in this digital age, there are always ways to track someone down." Earl frowned slightly, realizing Felix had a point. As someone experienced with computers, Earl knew that tracking a person's digital footprint, especially through their device's IP address, wasn't impossible. And given how similar his and Luca's musical styles were, it wouldn't take long to connect the dots once someone identified the device he used. No wonder Felix had lingered in front of his computer earlier. The guy had clearly done his homework. He wouldn't have come to Earl's dorm unless he was already sure of his identity. It also meant that Felix and his company had gone to great lengths, possibly even using hacking techniques, to uncover his real identity. Felix didn't bother hiding it. "To be honest, our company put a lot of resources into finding you. But if we can get you to work with us, it'll all be worth it." Earl chuckled and corrected him, "You don't have to be so formal, Mr. Chambers. Just call me Earl. I'm not some musical genius." Felix waved his hand dismissively. "All right, Earl. Still, finding you was worth every effort. Seeing how young and talented you are only makes me more certain that our company made the right call." Earl himself had no idea just how massive his influence on the online music scene had become. For months, Starlight Entertainment had been closely tracking Soul's rise. His fan base had already surpassed several million, and most of them were die-hard supporters. 2 of his songs had dominated the top charts, breaking records. And when he released his second album, the internet went wild. His song, Heart's Desire, stayed at the top of the trending charts for weeks. The hype had gotten so big that when rumors started circulating about him dropping a third song, search volumes skyrocketed into the tens of millions, making Soul the most searched name on the web. Chapter 125. Music forums and fan communities were buzzing with anticipation for Soul's next release, the excitement reaching a festival-level intensity. Even though the rumors turned out to be false, it was undeniable, Soul's influence had reached an almost legendary status. Luca, whose music style closely resembled Soul's, had also unexpectedly shot to the top of search rankings. Fans, unable to get enough of Soul, turned their attention to Luca as the next best thing. This only further proved just how massive Soul's impact was. This kind of phenomenon was unheard of in the music industry. Not even the biggest A-list stars had ever wielded this level of power over the internet. That was exactly why Starlight Entertainment was determined to sign Soul. His commercial value was immeasurable. In fact, Earl's emergence could very well push the country's music scene to an unprecedented level, redefining the industry and setting new standards. With that in mind, Felix made his pitch. Our company is organizing an all-star concert at Irene Music Academy soon. If you join us, we'll give you the headline spot. You'll be the grand finale, the biggest star of the night. I guarantee it, every major artist there will just be setting the stage for you. The offer was undeniably tempting, but Earl hesitated. He didn't want his identity revealed too soon. Music wasn't his only priority, he had other ventures to focus on. If he exposed himself now, it would complicate everything. Not to mention, he was still a student. Getting famous at a young age wasn't always a blessing, more often than not, it was a curse. But at the same time, Earl understood the reality. Starlight Entertainment knew who he was. If he outright rejected their offer, they had the power to leak his identity to the public. If that happened, his quiet life would spiral into complete chaos. He was caught in a dilemma. As a sharp businessman, Felix quickly caught on to Earl's concerns. Taking a sip of tea, he said in a calm, reassuring tone, "My superstar, we've already thought this through. Your identity will remain completely confidential. You can perform at the concert while staying masked or disguised. We'll handle everything. No one outside of our internal team will ever know who Soul really is. This way, your studies and personal life remain undisturbed." This arrangement aligned perfectly with Starlight Entertainment's interests. Keeping Soul a mystery meant keeping the hype alive, which in turn maximized the company's profits. Seeing that Earl was still considering, Felix leaned in and continued, "Of course, if you decide to sign with us, we guarantee you won't regret it. You can't even begin to imagine the amount you'll be paid." Felix strategically played up the financial angle, emphasizing the insane earning potential and the VIP treatment Earl would receive. Everything, from the contract's benefits to his status as the show's final act, was designed to make the offer irresistible. And it was working. Earl's expression shifted, showing clear signs of internal struggle. With Drakengard Games ramping up production on larger projects, the revenue from Panzer Saga was starting to feel stretched thin. If he accepted this concert gig, he could inject much-needed funding into his game studio, significantly boosting it. Weighing his options, Earl finally began asking for specifics, details about the contract, his obligations, and the rights he'd retain. Felix, thrilled by Earl's genuine interest, wasted no time. As he explained, he pulled a document from his bag and slid it across the table. "If you choose to work with Starlight Entertainment, we'll give you nothing but the best. Take a look, this contract represents our utmost sincerity." Earl took the contract and began reading it carefully. Chapter 126. The contract was indeed generous, a clear display of Starlight Entertainment's determination to sign Earl. The terms were lucrative, and the pay was tempting enough to make him seriously consider the offer. After carefully reviewing the contract to ensure there were no hidden traps, Earl finally nodded, picked up the pen, and signed his name before pressing his fingerprint onto the document. The signing process went smoothly, and Felix's mood visibly lifted. During their celebratory dinner, the atmosphere was lighthearted and pleasant. As they talked, Felix shared more details about the upcoming concert. It would be a massive event featuring nearly 10 stars, all from Starlight Entertainment's roster. Some of them were household names, icons of the entertainment industry. But this time, they would be the supporting acts. Soul's name had already taken the music scene by storm, overshadowing even the biggest A-list celebrities. After dinner, Earl and Felix parted ways. Felix wasted no time, heading straight to the company that night to report the successful signing. As for Luca, Felix had long since forgotten about him. For now, Starlight Entertainment's deal with Earl was officially sealed. Sure enough, by the next morning, the news of the phenomenal music prodigy Soul signing with Starlight Entertainment had taken over every entertainment headline. The moment the news broke, it shot straight to the top of all major search engines, becoming the undisputed hottest topic across entertainment media. Adding fuel to the fire, reports confirmed that Soul would be making his live debut at Irene Music Academy's upcoming concert. He would perform Time and Heart's Desire alongside Starlight's biggest stars. The announcement was like dropping a nuclear bomb into the industry. The music world erupted into complete chaos. Even Starlight Entertainment, a company known for its mastery of media hype, was stunned by the sheer magnitude of the reaction. They had anticipated Soul's popularity, but this was next level. The company had paid a hefty price to sign him, but judging by the overwhelming buzz, it was already proving to be the best investment they had ever made. And as Soul's hype continued skyrocketing, Starlight Entertainment's stock price also began climbing rapidly. What shocked them even more was the concert ticket sales. Originally, ticket sales for the Irene Music Academy concert had been lukewarm at best, steady but far from a sellout. But the moment Soul's participation was announced, the tickets were gone instantly, completely sold out. Fans who had missed out flooded online forums, desperately searching for scalpers to buy resale tickets, at any price. Before this, the concert's ticket prices had been relatively stable, with no major resale demand. But now, thanks to Soul, ticket prices skyrocketed, with some even being resold at 10 times their original value. Scalpers were making an absolute fortune. Even the event organizers at Starlight Entertainment were caught off guard by the insane demand. Faced with the unprecedented frenzy, Starlight had no choice but to contact Irene Music Academy to discuss the possibility of expanding seating capacity. The fan reaction was simply unbelievable. This level of ticketing madness had never happened before. Chapter 127. Irene Music Academy quickly agreed to the proposal. They were more than happy to capitalize on Soul's massive appeal to bring in a larger audience. This concert would be a huge honor for the Academy as well. Early in the morning, the sound of birds chirping filled the air. Earl was still fast asleep in his dorm when a commotion woke him up. Half awake, he could hear Joshua on the phone, sounding frantic as he tried to buy tickets for the Irene Music Academy concert. But no matter how much he was willing to pay, the tickets were nearly impossible to get, even offering 3 times the original price wasn't enough. Just then, Ronnie pushed open the door. Joshua immediately rushed over. "Ronnie, can you help me get 2 tickets? I don't care if they're the worst seats in the house, I'll pay triple the price." Ronnie shook his head. "You're dreaming. This concert is way too popular. Even if you offer 5 times the price, you probably still won't get them." Joshua let out a long sigh. "I know, but I never expected it to be this crazy. Soul's too damn popular. Queenie is insisting on going, and she said if I don't get tickets, she's breaking up with me. I'm seriously losing my mind here." Ronnie could only watch as Joshua panicked, completely helpless. Concert tickets for major stars were always hard to come by, but it was nearly impossible for Soul, who was at the peak of his hype. Meanwhile, in the girls' dorm, a group of students was excitedly discussing the upcoming concert. Queenie smugly held up 2 tickets, making sure everyone could see them. Joshua couldn't get the tickets, so she pulled some strings and got them herself. Jessica looked at the tickets with envy. "Queenie, how did you get those? Can you help me get one, too?" But Queenie shook her head. "It's impossible now. You won't find any left even if you offer more money. The other girls in the room also wanted tickets, but seeing how confident Queenie was, they kept quiet. Queenie then turned to Anna. Anna, did Zachary get your tickets yet? I heard he's loaded, shouldn't be a problem for him, right? Anna had been silent the whole time, but upon hearing the question, her face stiffened for a brief moment before forcing a smile. Not yet. Anna was one of Soul's most devoted fans, but she still hadn't managed to get a ticket. She had given Zachary money to buy one for her, but not only had he failed, he had spent all the cash on gambling instead. She had only found out afterward. The disappointment was crushing, but she couldn't bring herself to admit it to anyone. If her friends knew Zachary was nothing but a gambling addict, she would become the laughingstock of the entire dorm. In another dorm room, a similar conversation was happening. Belle and her roommates were also talking about the concert. Luna proudly showed off her ticket, boasting that her boyfriend, who was studying in Granada, had pulled some government connections to get it. She then smirked at Belle and asked, mockingly, what about you, Belle? Did your basketball star boyfriend manage to get you a ticket? The slight mockery in her tone made the other girls chuckle, though they tried to suppress their laughter to avoid hurting Belle's feelings too much. Belle shot Luna an annoyed look. It's just a concert ticket. It's no big deal. I don't even want to go. But deep down, she felt a pang of disappointment. While the entire campus was buzzing about Soul, Earl remained completely unaffected. He continued living his usual laid-back life, eating, sleeping, and relaxing without a care in the world. Chapter 128. One morning, Earl was jolted awake by a phone call from Wenzel, a student from the neighboring tech college. To his surprise, Wenzel was also scrambling for concert tickets and had even resorted to calling him for help. Earl couldn't help but chuckle. It seemed like this concert had become an obsession for everyone. Was Wenzel really this desperate, reaching out to him of all people? He should have gone looking for Faye instead. Given her rising fame in the music industry and her close ties with Donald, Earl figured she had the best shot at securing extra tickets. After all, she was one of the headlining performers for this event. If she couldn't get them, no one could. But Wenzel wasn't hopeful. The gap between him and Faye was too wide now, so she might not even acknowledge his request. After hanging up, Earl lay back in bed, turning over the idea of asking Felix for some VIP tickets to share with his friends. Just as he was lost in thought, he noticed Samuel entering the dorm with a pale face. His entire demeanor was off, his steps were sluggish, his eyes distant, and his whole presence carried a weight of unease. Earl had been observing him for days now. Samuel had been in this state for a while. But every time Earl asked what was wrong, Samuel brushed it off, refusing to talk. Earl decided not to push him further. That afternoon, after class, Earl headed to the campus radio station. Ever since landing the gig, he had spent half an hour every day in the station with Bianca, sharing stories, playing music, and reading poetry. Their chemistry was undeniable, and their broadcasts had quickly gained a loyal following. Some students even started using the station to send messages of love and encouragement to friends and crushes. Earl looked forward to this time with Bianca. She had a special place in his heart, one that, in some ways, had even surpassed Faye. Back then, when he pursued Faye, it was because she had given him the illusion that he might just reach her if he tried hard enough. But Bianca was like an untouchable goddess, someone so far above that all he could do was admire her from a distance. When Earl arrived at the radio room, Bianca wasn't there yet. Out of habit, he turned on the broadcasting equipment and tidied up the space while waiting for her. Not long after, the soft click of heels echoed through the hallway. A moment later, a striking figure appeared at the doorway. It was Bianca. She was wearing white sneakers, a knitted sweater, and a long black skirt. Her flowing hair cascaded like a silky river down her back, making her beauty almost breathtaking. Earl found himself daydreaming and imagining Bianca one day asking him, "Will you marry me?" Of course, it was just a fantasy. But honestly, being in the same room with her, even if they weren't doing anything, was enough for him. He could sit there all day, simply watching her move and listening to her voice, and never get bored. As soon as she arrived, their daily broadcast routine began. Bianca picked up the script she had prepared and softly recited a poem, her voice like a gentle melody. Earl listened intently, completely captivated. When she finished, he handed her a warm cup of water, something he had gotten into the habit of doing. Bianca accepted it naturally and flashed him a radiant smile. "Your turn to read now." Earl nodded and began his part. His deep, magnetic voice had already won over a lot of female listeners. Bianca glanced at the clock when he finished and realized they still had some extra time. "There aren't any more messages today," she said. "How about you sing a song that was requested?" Chapter 129. Earl hadn't expected Bianca to make such a request. Seeing the anticipation in her eyes, he hesitated before shaking his head. "My throat's been sore these past couple of days. I don't think I can sing." Bianca's eyes flickered with disappointment. Ever since their duet that night by the river, where Earl had played the guitar, his voice had left a deep impression on her. She had been secretly hoping to hear him sing again. But knowing he wasn't feeling well, she didn't push him to do so. Instead, she asked, "Earl, you play the guitar so well. Do you know Timeless Years?" Timeless Years was a recently acclaimed instrumental piece. Composed by a renowned maestro and his wife, the song blended piano and guitar into a tranquil, breathtaking melody. It evoked the peaceful nostalgia of a quiet afternoon, where lovers reminisced about their most cherished memories. The unique combination of the elegant piano with the humble guitar created an unexpectedly beautiful effect, making the song an instant classic. Earl shook his head. He had never heard of it before. A flicker of disappointment crossed Bianca's face, though she understood. After all, the piece had only recently gained attention, and not everyone had been exposed to it yet. Last year, while studying abroad, Bianca had been lucky enough to hear it performed live at the Golden Hall. She had fallen in love with it instantly, even taking the time to transcribe the sheet music and practice the piano part whenever she had the chance. She had always dreamed of playing it as a duet with someone. But until now, that had remained just a dream. To her surprise, Earl suddenly said, "I can learn it, though. Do you have the sheet music? Maybe I can pick it up." In an instant, Bianca's eyes lit up with excitement. She almost thought he was joking. After all, this wasn't an easy song to master. How could he just learn it on the spot? Still, she pulled a small, well-kept notebook from a drawer and handed it to him. Inside was her carefully transcribed version of Timeless Years. Earl flipped through the pages, scanning the notes carefully. The melody in his mind started to take shape, and he couldn't help but admire the piece's intricate beauty. Then, without hesitation, he reached for the guitar beside him and plucked a few strings. A soft, flowing resonance filled the room. Bianca froze. Even with just a few casual notes, Earl had already captured the song's soul. Before she could fully process it, Earl looked up at her with a smile. "This song is beautiful. Should we try playing it together?" Bianca's eyes widened. You've already learned it." Earl nodded casually. "I think I've got it." Her heart skipped a beat. She suddenly recalled the way Earl had flawlessly memorized an entire speech after just a 10-second glance. And before that, the way he had shattered academic records back in high school. Taking a deep breath, Bianca sat down at the piano and adjusted her posture. "All right, Earl, are you ready?" Earl nodded. "Ready, let's do this." With a gentle press of her fingers, the piano's notes rang through the broadcast room, carrying the unmistakable melody of Timeless Years. Earl followed seamlessly, his guitar blending into the tune like it had always belonged there. They played in perfect harmony, sometimes alternating and sometimes merging their melodies into one. Their music flowed effortlessly, creating a breathtakingly moving performance. The melody was both serene and full of emotion, soothing yet stirring as if it could transport anyone who listened to a peaceful, dreamlike moment in time. Outside, passing students paused, mesmerized by the sound. By the lakeside at Alnewgo University, couples nestled close to each other, basking in the soothing music that brought a sense of peaceful tranquility. At that moment, it felt as if the entire campus had entered a slower pace. For a brief moment, it was as if time had slowed, and the entire campus was caught in the spell of their song. Chapter 130. Belle's roommates were caught up in a heated discussion in her dorm room. Gigi, who was still in awe, exclaimed, "Oh my goodness! Is that Timeless Years on piano? I never thought I'd ever hear it performed live in this country." Bianca is probably the one playing the piano, but who's on the guitar? Layla chimed in, "Could it be Luca? He's the only one who can play this well." Gigi shook her head. "I don't think so. Even Luca doesn't have this level of skill. This is pure mastery, and more importantly, the piano and guitar blend together perfectly. It's as if their hearts are in sync. Only true soulmates can play with this kind of harmony." But the problem was that Bianca and Luca weren't together. So, who could it be? After tossing around theories, none of them could reach a conclusion. Finally, Lily declared, "I think the guitar part was pre-recorded. Bianca probably played the piano live, but the guitar must have been from the original track." Only Belle remained silent, lying in bed, staring toward the campus radio station. Her delicate brows were furrowed in deep thought. Regardless of who had played, the duet of Timeless Years had already become a legendary moment at Alnewgo University. The song had ended, but its echoes still lingered in the air. "That was incredible," said Phone as they got back to the radio station. Her voice was soft, but admiration shone in her eyes. Even she could hear the applause rising from outside the building. She could hardly believe that Earl had picked up the song after only glancing at it once, and played it flawlessly. "You were amazing, too," Earl responded. Bianca's piano skills were remarkable. But what struck him even more was the connection they had while playing. It was a rare, almost surreal feeling, like two souls intertwining through music, understanding each other without words. For Earl, this was more than just a duet. For a fleeting moment, he imagined what it would be like if he and Bianca could play together every day. Wouldn't that be beautiful? But did Bianca feel it, too? He glanced at her expression, hoping to find some hint of emotion. Yet, she seemed calm, her face holding no sign of the deep connection he had felt. Maybe this was just another song to her. The thought left a dull ache in his chest. Suddenly, Bianca turned to him and asked, "Earl, are you free this weekend?" He raised an eyebrow. "Why?" A faint blush crept up her cheeks. "It's my birthday. Will you come to my party?" Earl hadn't expected an invitation. A warm, subtle happiness bloomed in his heart. "Of course. I wouldn't miss it." Bianca's smile brightened. "Great. I'll send you the details later. See you there." Just as their broadcast session was wrapping up, a student rushed in. "Bianca, Leslie is looking for you." Bianca quickly gathered her things. "I have to go. See you later." Earl watched from the window as she hurried downstairs. A moment later, he spotted a tall, good-looking guy standing beside a sleek Mercedes. It was Leslie Klein. He walked up like a gentleman, holding the door open for Bianca before she slid into the passenger seat. Moments later, the car pulled away. Earl withdrew his gaze, his chest tightening with a feeling he didn't want to admit. Turning to the student, he asked, "Who's Leslie?" The student looked at him in surprise. "You don't know Leslie? He's Bianca's boyfriend." Earl froze. The student continued, "He runs his own business, comes from an insanely wealthy family, and his family is one of the most influential in Alnewgo. His net worth is in the billions." So, it was true. Bianca did have a boyfriend. It wasn't surprising. Someone like Bianca was bound to have suitors. Even here at the radio station, stacks of love letters and bouquets of flowers filled the trash cans daily. Still, knowing it was one thing. Hearing it being confirmed hit him differently. Earl had thought that, with time, he could quietly close the distance between them. But now, he realized Bianca was on a whole different level. By the time he caught up, she might already belong to someone else.